Hello everyone, I'm Maximus Avila, and today we're going to be looking at Apis mellifera and how to use optic flow during flight. So what is Apis mellifera? So the common names can be Western honeybees. They're going to be found in colonies, which is going to consist of queen, workers, and drones. They're going to use their wings to provide rapid wing beats for flight locomotion. They're going to have compound eyes, which is great for motion sensing and navigation and foraging. So today we're going to be focusing on the foragers. And so the foragers are going to go out and find the resources and bring them back to the hive. And when they bring them back to the hive, they're going to perform this waggle dance to let the other um, worker bees know where and where and how far the resources are. So a forager bee is going to perform a figure eight motion combined with wagging to convey the direction and distance of a food source. Why study Apis mellifera? So they're going to be key pollinators, which is essential for the ecosystem balance. They're going to have a huge agricultural impact because of their key pollinators. They're going to boost productivity by fertilizing fruits, vegetables, and seeds. And because of these two things, they're going to be in our best interest to conserve. So if we're studying honeybees, it's going to help preserve their populations and support environmental health. So a little bit of background on Apis mellifera vision. So they're going to need their vision, obviously, to navigate obstacles and avoidance, avoid obstacles. And so their compound eyes are going to be sensitive to motion and light polarization. Auditometry, it will let the bees use visual motion cues or optic flow, which we're going to go in further in today's research. How it works, they're going to perceive this movement of visual patterns, which is what we're going to be focusing on, is the optic flow. Visual landmarks and memory assist also help with navigation, and this is going to help them make sure they return back to the hive, which is what they're going to be to use for, that they make it back to the hive. This is demonstrates adaptive navigation strategies in varied environments like wind and terrain. So this is going to help them navigate. Here's all that put together for y'all. So today's research question is going to be, how does Apis mellifera, or honeybees, use visual cues to estimate distance traveled during flight? In our first source, we're going to be looking at honeybee navigation, properties of the visually driven odometer by Srini Vasan, Zhang, and Learer. In this study, they're going to be looking at how honeybees use visual cues to estimate distance during flight. These bees are going to be flying through tunnels with manipulated textures and contrasting patterns. And they're going to measure the waggle dance to see how that corresponds with the time of the waggle with the actual distance that their bees are flying through the tunnels in. So in these different tunnels, we're going to have the axle lines, and then we're going to have the checkered pattern. For the checkered pattern, you can see if we just look at the 8 meters for each pattern, we can see that the waggle dance is significantly shorter in the axle lines than compared to the checkered pattern. And this is just going to show that bees are going to rely on optic flow visual motion cues perceived during flight. Oops. And in this flight, you can see that the axle lines were the bees were unable to properly gauge the distance and resulted in an underestimated um, distance in the waggle dance than compared to the checkered pattern. In the second source, Honeybee Navigation and Route to the Goal Visual Flight Control and Auditometry by Siri Vasan, Zhang, Learer, and Collette. In this study, bees are trained to fly through tunnels or along defined routes to collect food rewards. And these controlled environments are going to use manipulated visual patterns and optic flow rates. We have 4 diagrams up here. In the first one, it's going to show that test the effect of visual pattern spacing for strike period on auditometry. Panel B down here is going to examine the impact of airflow or headwind versus tailwind on navigation. And it shows that bees are going to rely on an optic flow rather than a physical effort or airflow to estimate distance, which is why it kind of tapers out right here. Not tapers, but it has this very straight line right here in the middle. Up here on this next one, panel C is going to show how tunnel width affects the perceived optic flow navigation. A narrow tunnel is an increased optic flow density, leads to an underestimation of distance, which is why we have more of it tilting over here to this side. And a wider tunnel reduces the optic flow density, causing an overestimation, leading to the bees stopping farther along in the tunnel. And this last one down here, it's going to be very important when talking about the rest of our findings in these other researches. Panel D explored how axle stripes or patterns parallel to the flight path influence navigation. Bees are failing to accurately estimate distance, resulting in a broader and less distinct positional peak, as you see right here, compared to the other patterns. And our last source, Honeybee Navigation, Distance Estimation in the Third Dimension by M. Dack and V. Srivasan, our GOAT. Our study is going to show how honeybees estimate distance traveled in 3D and how it focuses on elementary. And so these bees are also going to be trained to fly to a food source through tunnels oriented vertically and horizontally. Now, this one's going to differ from our other ones just because it also shows how honeybees are going to be flying through different tunnels that are oriented vertically or horizontally. And we show up here, we have the waggle duration for the waggle dance. And down here, we're going to have the different tunnels. So we're going to be focusing how on this L-shaped tunnel right here. We have all these different shapes, right? We're focusing on the L shape because these are the exact same shape and size. However, you can see when we change the pattern from checkered to axial stripes, it's going to show a decrease in the waggle duration, which shows that honeybees are going to be underestimating the distance when gauging compared to when they have the checker pattern, it's going to show that they properly gauge that distance. Bees are going to use optic flows to estimate the distance. Distance estimation is consistent across 3D flight patterns, demonstrating robust odometry mechanisms, and vertical optic flow is significant as the horizontal optic flow for distance computation. So conclusion, honeybees use a visual-driven odometer based on optic flow to estimate distance during flight. This mechanism is effective across diverse conditions, lighting, terrain, and 3D spaces. Integration of visual cues with optic flow enables precise navigation and distance computation. So this is very important, just because when we're able to understand how they use navigation, we can confirm that they use optic flow in both horizontal and vertical spaces, which is they have a very robust visual odometry system. And for this is just going to highlight how they have adaptable navigation strategies, which integrates visual cue and memory that area adaptable to different environments. Such as we saw with the wind, they're able to go ahead with the wind just fine, just to show that physical is not taken into account when they're gauging distance. It's just going to rely on that visual cue. And for this is going to be very important. All this understanding is very important just so we can understand how they're able to gauge their distance. And it's also going to be able to apply to more vision-based navigation systems in robotics and AI. So that's everything. Here's our references. Here's a cute little picture of a tree, another tree, and that is everything for today.